I'm 88 years old, and on the morning of our 66th wedding anniversary, I discovered my husband had another wife. Not a girlfriend, not an affair, a wife. A legal marriage certificate, signed 3 years earlier while I was recovering from surgery. I stood in my kitchen holding the paper, my hands shaking so hard the tea spilled onto the floor. For 66 years, I had been loyal to one man, and Harold Bennett had built an entirely different life behind my back. But what he didn't know was that I had a secret of my own. My name is Evelyn MacKenzie, and this is the day I stopped being his fool. I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia in 1938. I met Harold when I was 21. He was charming, funny, wore polished shoes, and spoke with the confidence of a man who believed life would always bend in his favor. I mistook confidence for character. We married in a stone church near the harbor. I wore my mother's pearl earrings. He promised me forever, and for a long time, I believed him. We built a life in Toronto. 2 children, a brick house, summer barbecues, Christmas cards with smiling faces. From the outside, we looked like success. Inside the walls, we were strangers. Harold was never the shouting kind. He was smarter than that. He used quieter weapons. He forgot birthdays, dismissed my opinions, spent money without asking, corrected me in front of guests, made jokes at my expense, then called me sensitive. He kept me lonely in a crowded room. That kind of cruelty leaves no bruises, so no one believes it. When I cried, he said I was dramatic. When I asked for affection, he said I was needy. When I asked where he'd been, he smiled and said, out living. If someone betrays you slowly enough, you start calling it marriage. By 70, I had accepted disappointment the way people accept winter, unpleasant, predictable, never-ending. Then I became ill. At 85, I needed surgery on my hip. Recovery was painful. I could barely walk. Harold became strangely attentive during those months. He brought flowers, cooked soup, held doors open. I thought perhaps age had softened him. I was wrong. He was distracted, busy elsewhere. 3 years later, on our 66th anniversary, I went searching for an old insurance file in his desk. Harold was golfing. I opened a drawer I'd never touched. Inside were receipts, bank slips, and a folded envelope. I almost ignored it. Inside was a marriage certificate from Niagara Falls, Ontario. Groom, Harold Bennett. Bride, Lorraine Mercer. Date, 3 years earlier. I read it 5 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes the truth is so grotesque your mind rejects it. I checked again. Same signature, same man. My husband had married another woman while I was learning to walk again. I called the number listed beside Lorraine's emergency contact on another form. A woman answered, warm voice, mid-60s. I asked softly, do you know Harold Bennett? She chuckled. He's my husband. My knees nearly gave way. She said they'd met at a community theater group. He told her he was widowed. Widowed. I thanked her and hung up, then sat in silence for 1 full hour, not crying, not screaming, just seeing my whole life rearrange itself in my mind. He had not merely lied, he had erased me. But Harold had forgotten something important. For years, he believed I knew nothing about money, that I simply baked pies and watered flowers while he handled the world. What he never knew was that after he lost money in risky investments 20 years earlier, I quietly took over protecting our future. I had inherited land from my father in Nova Scotia. I sold it discreetly. With advice from my cousin, I placed the funds into investments in my name only. Then I purchased the Toronto house through a legal trust structure after Harold's debts nearly ruined us. He signed papers without reading them, as usual. He believed he owned everything. In truth, he owned very little. That evening, Harold returned sunburned and cheerful. "Anniversary dinner ready?" he asked. I placed the marriage certificate on the table. He froze, then recovered quickly. "Evelyn, let me explain." I said nothing. He tried anger next. "You went through my things?" Still nothing. Then pleading. "It means nothing." I finally spoke. "It means divorce." He laughed. At 88, he thought I was bluffing. Then I handed him a second envelope. Inside were documents from my lawyer, house ownership records, asset protections, divorce filing papers. His smile disappeared. You learn a lot about a man the moment he realizes you were never powerless. He shouted louder that night than in the previous 10 years combined. Threatened, insulted, begged. Then he cried, real tears, but not for love, for consequences. Lorraine contacted me 2 weeks later. She was devastated. She had sold her condo, believing she was starting a final chapter with a widower. Instead, she discovered she was part of a fraud. We met for tea. 2 women lied to by the same aging fool. By the end of the afternoon, we were laughing. There is something healing about shared truth. She annulled her marriage. I finalized my divorce. Harold moved into a rented apartment above a pharmacy. No house, no wife, no second wife, just mirrors. I sold the family home and moved to a bright apartment overlooking Lake Ontario. I bought yellow curtains because Harold hated bright colors. I joined a book club. I learned email at 88. I took a train to Montreal simply because I wanted to. Sometimes freedom arrives late, but it still arrives beautifully. My children were shocked, then ashamed they hadn't seen more. I told them something important. Children are not responsible for the lies of their parents. That released all of us. People ask if I regret spending 66 years with Harold. No. Regret is too expensive at my age. I prefer wisdom. Here is what I know. Loyalty without respect is self-abandonment. Silence protects the wrong person. And betrayal does not expire because you are old. I'm 88 years old. The day I discovered my husband secretly married another woman was the day I married myself back to dignity. And if you think it's too late to begin again, take it from Evelyn MacKenzie. Sometimes your real life starts after the final lie.